Recap Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 855, Chapter Translator, Henyi Translations. Editor, Henyi Translations. Listen closely, because when the winds of fate finally turned that day, even jealousy became a blade, even farewell tears became a kind of cultivation, and even heaven itself had to blink in silence. Who knews jealousy? It was no ordinary sulking of a young lady. It was the kind that could ignite thunder in a clear sky. Think about it. Every woman who stood near Ling Han, every one who might steal a glance or share a breath of closeness with him, was taken away and bundled onto that departing divine ship. What was left beside him? A pile of men. The Rain Emperor, calm as an old pine in winter. Mu Rongqing, steady and disciplined. Feng Po Yun, bold as a roaring banner. The Rabbit, restless, shameless, and always looking for trouble. And even the Rock Spirit, stubborn as a mountain. Who knew stared at that lineup and, her nose lifted toward the heavens. With only that bunch left by Ling Han's side, there was no danger at all of anyone turning him the other way. So her jealousy burned even hotter, because she knew the ones she truly wanted to guard against had already been dragged away, and dragged they were, because the young melody spoke, and her words were like an imperial decree stamped into destiny, effective, absolute. Whether the passengers were willing or unwilling, they had to board the ship. Some didn't mind at all. In fact, some were secretly delighted, hearts already flying ahead to the immortal realm, dreaming of higher skies and greater Dao. But others were reluctant enough to make the air heavy. Ling Han's parents were the most painfully torn. All these years, their lives had been more parting than gathering, more watching their son's back disappear into distance than holding him close at the table. And now, just when they had him again, fate demanded another separation. Their hearts cracked quietly, the way old wood splits in winter. Only one thing kept them from collapsing into endless worry. Their grandson stood with them. That little life, that little warmth at their side, became a lantern in the fog. It gave them somewhere to place their hopes, somewhere to pour their longing. Otherwise, they would have thought of their son day and night until their hair turned grey from sorrow alone. Nearby, the women who were leaving could no longer hold themselves together. Zhu Xuan cried until her eyes shone like wet red jewels. Li Xichan's tears fell in silence, but every drop carried a farewell she couldn't say aloud. Liu Yutong tried to be composed, tried to stand straight, and still her face trembled as tears gathered again. Even Helian Shun Shui, who was famous for being headstrong, who could face storms without lowering her chin, still revealed reluctance in the tightness of her gaze, in the way her hands lingered as if unwilling to let go of the world she was leaving. And then, as if the heavens decided the scene wasn't chaotic enough, 2 loud protests rang out. The Lunar King shouted, voice sharp with indignation, "Why are you dragging this king away too? This king has nothing unclear going on with that brat." Yi Shuang immediately chimed in, just as fierce, just as unwilling. Yeah! This lady is as clear as ice and jade, completely nothing to do with that brat. She wanted to return to the immortal realm, yes, but not like this. Not shoved onto a ship by someone else's command, not leaving behind her own choices like scraps on the ground, but who knew only snorted. Her little face carried the seriousness of someone guarding treasure, and her words spilled out with the logic of a jealous guardian spirit. Big fairy, little fairy, big and small fairy. News worried about all of them. Take them all away. Worried, that was the word she used, yet anyone with eyes could see it. This was not gentle worry, this was possession. This was mine, stamped into the air with the force of a blood oath. So the boarding happened. One after another, no matter what was in their hearts, relief, fear, excitement, sorrow, they stepped onto that divine ship. And once everyone was aboard, the ship began to rise, slowly. Not like an arrow launched in haste, but like a celestial beast lifting from the sea, calm and inevitable, carrying destinies in its belly. At the bow, Hu Nu leaned forward and waved with all the strength her small body could summon, as if her arm alone could tie the ship to the world. "Ling Han! You definitely have to find new." Her voice cut through the wind, through the distance that was already opening like a wound. Ling Han stood below, gaze dark and steady, and answered in a low voice that carried the weight of a vow. "Definitely." He didn't say more, but his heart spoke the rest. Soon he would charge into the immortal realm. Soon he would gather everyone again. And when that day came, Rock Palace would not look down on him as they once had. They would be forced to see him anew, to respect him as a man who walked his own path with heaven-shaking resolve. Then, Hong, the divine ship, tore open a spatial fissure, a crack in reality itself, and shot straight into it like a dragon diving into a hidden river. And when the stern vanished into that tearing gap, the fissure snapped shut at once, disappearing so cleanly it was as if the divine ship had never existed at all. Silence tried to return, but heaven refused to let the world breathe. A terrifying, oppressive force surged down like a mountain dropping from the sky. The eye of heavenly Dao appeared. It blinked in the heavens, huge, cold, ancient, and blood dripped from it. Worse still, the world itself began to rain blood, as if the land and sky were mourning, as if the very laws of existence were lamenting the injury of that eye. That massive eye, the symbol of heaven and earth's will, fixed its gaze on Ling Han. The stare was killing intent made visible, a wordless declaration, "I want you dead." Ling Han did not kneel. He did not retreat. He simply stood there with his hands behind his back, posture proud and unyielding, his imposing manner not inferior in the slightest, even when facing the will of heaven itself. Yes, the eye of heavenly Dao was powerful, powerful enough to crush him if it truly wished. But heaven and earth had rules. And rules are not decorations. They are the spine of existence. So long as one did not defy the natural order, heaven and earth could not casually strike them down. Even the eye of heavenly Dao had to obey that law, because if heaven itself broke its own rules, then heaven and earth would lose the meaning of their existence. Ling Han had acted for humanity. He had lived up to his conscience. He had stood for the people of the world. So why should he fear that gaze? The eye of heavenly Dao blinked, once, as if weighing him, and then it vanished again. Only after it disappeared did the survivors finally dare to exhale. In the aftermath, the remaining 7 kings, those who had not been taken, caught their breath fully, and their complaints poured out like water bursting from a cracked jar. "Damn!" one of them spat, frustration thick in his tone. "Seventh sister's been kidnapped. How do we explain to the boss?" Their faces were grim, not because they feared battle, but because they feared the consequences of that report. Ling Han, however, smiled, calmly, even teasingly, and spoke as if easing the tension with a blade of humor. "Thanks to everyone for rushing to the rescue. But look, maybe the Lunar King entering the Divine Realm 1 in advance isn't actually a bad thing." His eyes glinted. "If you don't work hard, then when you all meet again, maybe the Lunar King will hang you up and beat you." The 7 kings' expressions changed drastically, because that wasn't a joke to them. The Lunar King really would do such a thing. In an instant their pride flared like fire. No, they could not allow that future. They had to cultivate. They had to push harder. At their level, their cultivation itself could not easily improve any more. But their divine sense could. That was the main direction of cultivation for them now. Temper the spirit, sharpen the divine sense, strengthen the unseen blade within. Once they entered the divine realm and broke through to the god tier, they would welcome a period of rapid growth, improving by leaps and bounds like a hawk catching an updraft. So the 7 kings took their leave. The Lunar King being brought to the divine realm was no small matter. It had to be reported to Maduobao immediately. No delay, no excuses. Ling Han watched them go, and once they had departed, he returned to the imperial palace with Feng Po Yun and the Rain Emperor. The demon servants had been completely annihilated. Yes, but victory is never the end. The demonic qi lingering across the desolate north still had to be cleaned. The ruined lands had to be rebuilt, and that work, slow, heavy, complicated, was its own kind of battle. While those burdens loomed, Feng Po Yun did what Feng Po Yun always did. He turned hardship into laughter and uncertainty into bold decision. He was broad-hearted and generous, and he noticed something that made him grin. Ling Han didn't quite know whom to call Big Brother 2 among them in the first place. So Feng Po Yun slapped the problem with the simplest solution. Then let's not fuss about it. The 4 of us will become sworn brothers. The Rain Emperor agreed gladly. Mu Rongqing also agreed without hesitation, and just like that the brotherhood was sealed. Naturally, Feng Po Yun became the eldest. His aura alone demanded it. The Rain Emperor became the second eldest, steady and dignified. Mu Rongqing became the third eldest. And Ling Han? Ling Han dropped a grade, from being the third to being the fourth, and became the youngest brother. This made him quite gloomy. Being third had already felt pitiful enough. Now he was reduced to fourth. He had no grand speech for it, no dramatic rage. He simply carried that small gloom like a pebble in his shoe, and since there was nothing else to do, he cultivated. Because cultivation, at least, was honest. It rewarded effort with strength. Ling Han and his brothers all strove to become stronger. They had witnessed great power. They had seen a force so absolute that even the eye of heavenly Dao had no choice but to yield in front of it. That sight left a deep mark in their hearts, moving them, igniting them, awakening a fierce fighting spirit that refused to be extinguished. They wanted to dictate their own destiny. And to do that, they needed the support of terrifying strength, so time slipped by quietly. Strangely, the sea race made no movements at all. No waves of invasion, no grand schemes spilling onto the land. No one knew if they simply looked down upon the land and chose to ignore it, or if they were waiting for something. Some sign, some moment, some hidden opportunity. Besides, even though Aojian was powerful, he still was not powerful enough to rival Ma Duobao, and Ma Duobao had something even more frightening than his own cultivation, the power of the nation's blessing. That force made him even more terrifying, like a man holding not only a blade but the weight of an empire behind the swing. Half a year passed, and then at last Ling Han broke through. He stepped into the shattering void tier. The moment he did, Hong, Long, Long! Heaven and earth reacted immediately. Thunderclouds crowded together above him, dense and violent, as if the sky itself had turned into a black sea. Inside those clouds, dazzling white lightning flickered again and again, brewing danger so intense it made the world feel smaller beneath it. To tread into the shattering void tier was not merely a personal achievement. It was a threat to heaven and earth, so the heavens imposed restrictions and the world demanded a price. To truly become a shattering void tier existence, one had to pass the heavenly tribulation. Survive it, and you stood among the true powers of the realm. Fail, and there was only one word waiting at the end: death. That too proved the bearing of the shattering void tier. Even heaven and earth would interfere. Ling Han stood proudly between heaven and earth, letting the tribulation come, and it did. The heavenly tribulation transformed into the ninth heaven's divine thunder, lightning separate from the five elements, infinite in might, a punishment drawn from a higher law. Hong, Long, Long, the divine thunder was terrifying. Its power reached shattering void tier 20 stars. Now think, what battle prowess did someone usually have right after breaking into the shattering void tier? Barely reaching 1 star was already praiseworthy, and if you barely had 1 star, how could you possibly rival shattering void tier 2 stars, much less 20? Fortunately, heaven was cruel, but not endlessly so. The tribulation continued for a limited amount of time, half a day. If passing the heavenly tribulation required defeating it outright, then the world would be a graveyard of broken geniuses. There would probably only be 1 in 10,000 shattering void tiers remaining. The thunder fell. Pa, 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 pa! It struck Ling Han's body again and again. And yet, it was as if small rain swept by, no effect at all. Because the instant Ling Han stepped into the shattering void tier, his physique also surpassed 10th tier rare metal and reached the level of divine metal. Divine metal. What threat could divine thunder, no matter how savage, pose to a body forged into that realm? And Ling Han did not merely endure, he took advantage. Instead of resisting with panic, he relaxed his body and mind and began to absorb the power of the heavenly tribulation, using it to improve his body of lightning. His body of lightning, after all, was still at the level of a novice. To attain great mastery, the lightning he needed could not merely be strong, it had to be pure. Refining normal lightning would never be enough. But this was heavenly tribulation. This was divine thunder. How could it not be used? Invigorating. That was the feeling, like drinking from a spring that burned and healed at the same time. Ling Han absorbed the power of thunder while the thunderclap ninth heaven circulated within his body, guiding the lightning through his meridians. changing him from the inside out, advancing him steadily toward great mastery. His brothers watched with mixed emotions, pride, awe, and pressure. Mu Rongqing shook his head with a helpless laugh, voice full of envy and sincerity. Truly envious. Our youngest brother is the first to advance to the shattering void tier, yet I'm still just a sliver away from heaven tier. He was happy for Ling Han, truly, but the pressure was real. Mu Rongqing's cultivation speed was not slow at all, yet compared to Ling Han's, it felt like a horse racing a windstorm. The Rain Emperor smiled, calm and encouraging. Our youngest brother is a true genius, exceptional martial arts talent, and also a master at alchemy and formations. You don't have to be envious, just cultivate diligently. Feng Po-yun nodded again and again, eyes shining as he watched the divine thunder strike harmlessly across Ling Han's divine metal body. Our youngest brother's physique is terrifying. Not only does he remain unharmed under the bombardment of divine thunder, he's even transforming it for his own use. And just as those words hung in the storm-lit air, a soldier came rushing in, breathless, urgent. Report! He fell to his knees at once, voice loud and respectful. Report to the Three Kings. The special ambassador of Purple Moon Emperor's court requests a meeting. Beneath a tempest of divine thunder, Ling Han stood unflinching, his slender form radiant with an otherworldly light, as if he himself were a being descended from heaven. The furious bolts danced around him, striking and rebounding, yet his body absorbed their energy like a sculptor welcoming the chisel's strike. For him, the heavenly tribulation was no trial of fear, but a symphony of sensation, a rigorous massage from the cosmos itself. His lightning-infused body surged toward mastery, every fibre of his being resonating with raw electric potential. The edge of perfection, at least within the reach of mortal comprehension, shimmered tantalizingly close. And yet, beyond this mortal coil, in realms untouched by human eyes, perhaps an even grander limit awaited, a horizon Ling Han could scarcely imagine. Half a day passed, and when the final echoes of the thunder faded, he had triumphed effortlessly. His lightning body now shimmered in full mastery, a testament to his relentless cultivation. Congratulations! Congratulations! You have ascended to the shattering void tier, stepping beyond the confines of mortality. Small Tower's voice rang within his consciousness, unexpectedly warm. Ling Han froze, startled. You can speak words of congratulation now? Have you changed? He asked in disbelief. Small Tower emitted a dismissive snort. Do you wish I send a divine wave to obliterate you instead? Ling Han laughed, the sound ringing through the storm. Ah, that's more like you. I knew I could count on your honesty. Small Tower's tone shifted into gloomy muttering. Did it always speak so harshly? Ling Han pondered aloud, curiosity piqued. But you say shattering void tier only barely surpasses mortal limits? What of the flower blossom tier? Did it not already transcend the ordinary? Small Tower exhaled, pride lining its words. The shattering void tier is no mere step. It is the threshold where one can shatter the void while set foot upon the divine realm itself. To claim mastery here is to truly step beyond the mortal domain. Ling Han nodded slowly, realization dawning. He had crossed into a new echelon, one uncharted even by the experience of his previous life. From this point the path stretched into the unknown, and he alone must navigate it. Small Tower's voice shifted, teasingly cryptic. There are 2 pieces of good news and 1 piece of ill tidings. Which shall I impart first? Ling Han's brow furrowed. You've certainly taken a strange turn today. Let's hear the bad news first. You can no longer employ Black Tower's power boost, Small Tower declared. If it could have rolled its eyes, it certainly would have. Ling Han's expression darkened. This had been his ultimate trump card, one usage in each tier that could turn despair into triumph. Why, he demanded. It was never meant as a crutch for one who has grown beyond weakness. No reliance is allowed. Small Tower's tone held finality. Ling Han exhaled, a weight settling on him, and then came the promise of reprieve. What, then, is the good news? He asked. First, the 3rd layer of Black Tower's depths has opened. Small Tower announced. Ling Han's eyes glimmered with exhilaration. Divine metal, the key to forging instruments of unmatched power in the divine realm, was now within his reach. The 3rd layer alone could yield 0.5 kilogram per year, the quality growing if left untouched, each fragment a testament to cosmic craftsmanship. The remainder of the layers await your ascension into the divine realm, Small Tower clarified. Even a modest beginning is no small gift. Ling Han's pulse quickened. To wield weapons of divine metal was to hold sway over realms where ordinary blades would crumble into irrelevance. The second tidings, Small Tower continued, offered yet another boon. You may now cultivate the second layer of the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Ling Han froze, trepidation mingling with awe. The first layer had demanded 10 millennia to comprehend. Would the second layer require 1,000,000? Small Tower, ever sly, merely snorted. The first layer tempered your flesh, but contained deeper principles you have yet to grasp. The second layer calls to your divine sense. It is not beyond your reach, but be not hasty in assumption. A surge of excitement flooded Ling Han. The indestructible Heaven Scroll's second layer would fortify his divine sense, the fragile core of living essence. Mortal attacks could shatter it. Even now, a sneak strike from the Sword King might leave his body whole but extinguish his inner essence. To guard against such calamity required mastery over the divine sense, a power beyond mere physical imperishability. And so, Ling Han immersed himself in the scroll. Golden characters, ageless and radiant, poured into his consciousness, not mere words, but pure essence of understanding. For 10 days he dwelt within their light, unraveling truths that surpassed language itself, his divine sense awakening with every pulse of perception. When he finally descended from the heights of meditation, Feng Po Yun and the others awaited him, concern etched upon their faces. "Younger brother, did your breakthrough cause no harm?" they asked. Ling Han smiled, a hint of embarrassment colouring his cheeks. "I am well, older brothers. I was caught in sudden comprehension, lost in thought." Relief spread across their faces. The Rain Emperor, patting Ling Han's head with gentle fondness, added, "A special envoy from the Purple Moon Emperor's court has arrived." Ling Han's interest piqued. Why have they come? Ma Duobao prepares to split open the skies, and has extended a special invitation to witness the ceremony, Feng Po Yun explained, a smile breaking across his face. Time had flown. Half a year had passed since Hu Niu and his parents departed. Ling Han had been consumed by cultivation, leaving little room for thought of family or love. Yet now, a tide of yearning surged through him, a desire to ascend to the divine realm without delay. "Very well," he said, determination bright in his eyes. "Let us ready ourselves for the ceremony. I wish to arrive strong, that all may benefit from this act." The three brothers laughed, understanding the weight of the task. Splitting open the skies was no trivial matter. Each day spent idle invited the schemes of the 5 sects and the scrutiny of the sea race. Now a party of 50, including the rabbit, rock spirit, gold-seeking rat, Helian Tianyun, Guangyuan, Kan Yi, and the generals, prepared to journey to the Purple Moon Emperor's court, their hearts set upon the most heroic act the small world had seen. The air itself seemed to hum with anticipation, for this was no ordinary ascent. It was the tearing of the heavens, the daring to open the very sky itself, a testament to the indomitable will of mortals reaching toward the divine.